back a few years to when you first started dealing with ME. And obviously time to change is very much about fighting stigma, and stigma manifests itself in two ways. One is the internal voice I create for myself that says, I can't do this because other people will think this about me. And then there's the external voices that come at me that say I'm weird, I'm odd, I'm strange, etc. So when you, two questions in one, when you first got ME, did you feel impacted by stigma in any way, shape or form? Because I guess with the whole yuppie flu, it was quite derogatory of a medical condition. So first question is about stigma really. And then secondly, because you hired yourself, I think that's the description you used, you hired yourself out of almost stigma because you felt employers wouldn't employ you because of your illness. So you chose an option which was hiring yourself, if I'm right in thinking. Just expand on that a bit, really.
Sure. I mean, yes, there was a stigma, and I don't want to be wearing the victim t-shirt here and going, you know, life's unfair and I had to deal with all this stigma. I was just aware that, you know, I became ill in the late 80s with ME. And like you say, it was known as yuppie flu and people didn't understand it. And the thing is, what happened was you've got no cast on your, you know, you've not got a cast on your arm or on your leg. I didn't initially, although I did eventually have a walking stick. You're not in a wheelchair. So people look at you, a bit like, again, with obviously mental health, and it's like, look all right to me. And because I was, one of the things I'm delighted about now is I can take regular exercise, but with ME, I couldn't. So I put weight on. And it seems interesting. It's almost like people kind of go, almost associate putting a bit of weight on is, oh, you're looking all right. So there was that kind of people kind of going, yeah, but if you're really ill, and we know you're ill because you tell us, and because you've been, because you've lost your job through it, but why do you look so well when you're really ill? So there was that confusion. My doctor at the time, he sent me to a psychiatrist in Liverpool because he actually didn't think there was anything wrong with me. It was all in my head. So you got the stigma of that. And then there was the stigma of what you sometimes read in a paper. And there was this sense of, you know, are you being genuine here? As ME become the new back pain? And you just don't like work. And I remember one guy, well-meaning guy, but he said to me, I envy you. He said, you stay at home all day, you can watch the TV, your wife goes out to work, and when she comes back, she's the one who makes you tea. How lucky are you? Well, to say, you know, I'm not a particularly violent person, and I'm not, well, I'm not, as I got particularly, I'm not at all. But, you know, if I'd been inclined to want to punch someone, that could have been a good wreck. It's like, you so don't understand where I'm coming from. Now, the thing about employers, it wasn't about a stigma. It was about, I couldn't honestly go for a job where if I've got a CV or filled in an application form, I've got this gap of 3 years. And when they could look at me in the eye and going, so are you well now? Have you recovered? I knew the nature of the illness was I'd improve and then I'd relapse and then I'd improve and then relapse again. So I knew I couldn't look them in the eye and go, yeah, take a risk on me because I'm sure I'm okay. Because again, going back to the analogy of the phone and being charged up, I knew it was only on 25% anyway. I knew I couldn't have anything demanded. And also by being employed by someone, it could mean they had more control over my life than I did as self-employed. So yes, was the stigma. There was to a degree, but also equally, there was a lot of support and people who were very much for me and trying to understand it and caring for me. We didn't have food banks in those days, but I remember like family would sometimes turn up to see me and then have a box of food, because I was relying on my wife's wage, but we had a salary based on a mortgage based on the salary I no longer had. So yeah, there was some stigma, but I've got to be honest, there was plenty of support as well.
So You half answer my questions before I ask them. So, in terms of the ME,
yeah,
it is a medical condition, but did you think yourself out of it, or did you think yourself into being able to cope with it, or was it treated medically?
I don't know. I still don't understand. ME is a bit of a mystery to me. And I could be super positive, like I tried to be whilst I was ill with the virus recently. But I have to be honest with you and say there were days when I was so exhausted. I just had to go with it. I just had to accept this is where we are today. And so when I was on better days, I think my positivity was helpful. But sometimes my positivity meant I wanted to try and achieve things and push myself too much. So I'm not going to say positivity was a problem to me. It wasn't. But neither am I going to say I thought myself out of ME and that's the reason because I recovered. Because I think that'd be very detrimental to other people who have the illness. Because it's almost like I'm saying, well, if you sorted out your attitude, you recover. And I don't think I think that'd be quite offensive. So was my attitude helping me at times on certain days? I'm sure it was. But was it a struggle? Absolutely. At times it really was. And were the days when I was just so exhausted, I just had to accept that's where you're at today, Paul. And you can come downstairs, you can make yourself a cup of tea and feel like you've just run 3 triathlons. And you just got to sometimes go with that and go back to bed and crash out.
Sort of the final question. So, Sumo, shut up and move on. You've already said that sometimes, and in education you highlighted particularly that it's sometimes not received well. How do we put that? As Tony's mentioned, I'm quite stoic in my philosophy. When I lived in a monastery, if someone said plant 1,000 garlic cloves in a straight line, and I planted 1,000 and then they said it wasn't straight enough, I'd go back to the beginning and I'd smile and I'd start again, because that was what I was asked to do in the first place. So I know it is okay sometimes for me to shut up and move on. It's okay for me to control what's within my control, and to a degree it's okay for me to man up within myself. And the whole phrase man up's quite criticised these days, but how would you empathetically put that people have sometimes got to do what's within their control to stand up on their own 2 feet and move forward?
I think one of the things that's not helpful for people is just to see they are now a victim of the coronavirus or other circumstances. Because what that can cause people to do is to be very fatalistic and almost like very passive and wait for other people to rescue them. But one of my Sumo questions is, how can I influence or improve the situation? So, and that is very much about what's in my control that I can do something about. And sometimes shut up your moaning about stuff you can't do anything about. And shut up even criticism about what other people's decisions have been around how they deal with this. Well, fair enough. I don't think any government around the world is thinking, how can we screw this up for our population and for our reputation? But mistakes clearly have been made, not just here, but in other parts of the world. But, you know, I wouldn't envy any politician at the moment. So again, we go back to start with compassion and kindness. So, but, you know, shut up your moaning about stuff you can't do anything about. Maybe even shut up your complaining and think, how much is that really serving you? And move on and think, okay, what is still within my control? And focus, as you say, on that, rather than, and certain things that are in your control is what you feed your mind with, what you're feeding your fears with, and what you focus on magnifies. So just take a little bit of ownership of that. And at the end of the day, you know, we can sort of wake up feeling tired and miserable. I always say this, but remember this, you woke up. So today is another day. I learned during my illness when I got quite low, because I started to think about the future. And it was like, almost like calling out to the universe, to the divine, and going, I just need your grace for today. It's just about today. And what can I take some control over? I can still think about, what am I thankful for? How am I going to show kindness to others? how am I going to show kindness to myself? I can, there are, it's used in sport a lot, control the controllables. And there were certain things that are out of my control. Well, I keep focusing on them and thinking about them and talking about them, when actually there are things that are in my control. So I've not been a victim of the coronavirus. I've experienced it. I'm a survivor of it, thankfully. And I hope now, as a result of that, I can share some insights and maybe a bit of wisdom and thoughts that I've learned from this process, and that will be beneficial to other people, whether they ever get the virus or not, because I think what I've been learning are lessons for life.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure talking to you both. Well, a couple of things whilst I remember. I think if they were to go onto Amazon, put my name in, Paul McGee, or the title of one of my books, How Not to Worry, that's available as a free download at the moment. So I'm almost more bothered about you get access to some further information completely free, that unpacks and lifts the lid a lot more on worry, anxiety and stress. So that's the first thing that I'd always like to ask people to do if they want to, for themselves or other people. Secondly, my website is thesumoguy.com, and you can click onto my YouTube channel on there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, same address, @thesumoguy. So always great to interact and engage with people, and get any feedback that people have from watching or listening to this. But I think you just need to think about, so it's we talk about the mind-body connection, but there's also a body-mind connection, not just mind-body, it's body-mind. So in other words, when I go out for a walk, when I take some physical exercise and activity, I'm out in nature, I'm absorbing some vitamin D. And what's interesting is that my activity, my physical activity, can impact my mental activity. So that's great. But the fact is, if you do keep on worrying, and we can end up worrying and have a release of cortisol over something called, anticipatory stress. So in other words, the event hasn't happened, it possibly never will happen, but because you picture it in your mind and think about it and visualize it and engage with it, the brain's not going, oh yeah, but it's just an image in your brain. Your brain's kind of like, it's hard to tell the difference between a real or a vividly imagined event. So it releases cortisol. Now what we do know is cortisol can over time perhaps impact the immune system. So what I would say is, very much just as you're taking your body for a walk, your physical activity can improve your mental outlook. What I'd also say is that your mental outlook can also then maybe put your body in a better position to deal with some of the challenges that it might face if you were unfortunate enough to get the virus or something else in the future.
It's been like looking in a mirror for an hour, a much more handsome mirror than the one I normally look at.
Well, the tango mirror, I know, yeah.
No, but everything you say, I buy into. It's a way I've lived my life. It's a way I've got myself better over the last few years, and it's the way I'll continue to live my life. So, absolutely. I hope someday we can bump into each other in Warrington and have a coffee.
I'm sure. Sounds good.
That'd be really nice. But fully appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right.